Welcome to First in Future Connecting in Crisis, a weekly webinar from the Institute for Emerging Issues. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to take up what is really the biggest question about the coronavirus for a lot of people. How do we find our way back from unemployment? Today, we're going to review some of the numbers and look at three different likely pathways back. Back to work immediately, back to school, and for some, into service for a while. Our thanks to Lowe's, the home improvement retailer, for their sponsorship of this program. I'm Leslie Boney at the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State. For the past 10 weeks, we've been focusing on some of the biggest issues emerging during the pandemic. If you'd like to see our past shows on small business, entrepreneurship, food and hunger, reaching the hard to reach, connecting online, churches, education, law enforcement, and the courts, please go to our website, emergingissues.org. Before we get started today, I wanted to share some bad news. Some of you may have heard. Andrea Harris, a member of the Institute for Emerging Issues National Advisory Board, a servant leader in North Carolina, died yesterday at the age of 72. She was a proud resident of Vance County, proud graduate of Bennett College, and a lifelong supporter of historically Black colleges and universities. At 23, she was the youngest community action agency head in the country and went on to found the Institute for Minority Economic Development, which has changed lives for the past 30 years now. She was a friend to me, a mentor to me, someone who helped me understand a lot of things, and she will be sorely missed. Andrea Harris died yesterday at the age of 72. It was not COVID related. She had been struggling for about 6 weeks. I think she would be glad that we're taking up today's topic because it was one that was close to her heart. As North Carolina gets closer to restarting, we really want to focus on this issue that is so important to the economy. More than 23 million people nationally in the U.S. are unemployed. Another 2.2 million reported this morning filing for unemployment, 15% unemployment, possibly heading north from there. Plus, you add to that about 2.2 million people who are emerging from school, either high school or community college or four-year university, that are looking for work, and it's not a good time for them. So sorting through all that is not going to be easy. And today we want to focus on three different partial solutions that people are having to confront. Most of the unemployed are going to immediately be trying to get back to work. How can a system accustomed to about a 4% unemployment rate deal with the flood of people who need their services to get back to work? Some of the unemployed are going to head back to school. This happens every time as recessions get underway, and the largest increases statistically typically come in community colleges. And for some people just graduating, there's a new proposal before Congress that proposes a huge expansion of national service to meet the critical needs that our communities are facing right now, but also to equip young people with some important skills and a sense of purpose. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We ask that those of you who are joining us live look to the chat box for all sorts of information. And it's also a place where you can share your concerns, talk to each other, but also ask questions for our guests. We'll also be providing links and other information there. For those of you who are joining us on the recorded version of this podcast, all of our slides that we're talking about today will be available on our website. Again, it's emergingissues.org. We're honored today to have three guests, Congressman David Price, who represents North Carolina's 4th District, Dr. Laura Leatherwood, president of Blue Ridge Community College and a member of President Trump's pandemic response force for the community colleges of North Carolina. She's the Western representative. And Jeff Frederick, who's the VP for Global HR at RTI in the Triangle of North Carolina. He's also chair of the state's Association of Workforce Boards, which is responsible for helping unemployed people find their way back to work. So welcome to you all. Dr. Leatherwood, let me start with you. Governor Cooper announced a partial phase two return yesterday. You're on the community college response team, and I'm wondering what you're hearing either from the businesses in your area or from the communication among your other fellow community college presidents about how long it's going to take us to recover. Obviously, you don't just flip a switch and everybody gets their jobs back. And obviously, not everybody who has been in school is going to go back immediately.
Well, I think from our 58 community colleges, though, let me just start by saying is that this is not new for us. We have been offering quality online instruction for many, many years. So being in this situation, we were prepared. We had a good plan. However, that does not mean that it wasn't challenging for us to quickly pivot to where we are now. Taking a step back, we canceled. Let's use Blue Ridge as an example. We canceled all classes 1 week, and the very next week reopened with online instruction. And obviously, with safety in mind of our students, our staff, our faculty, and certainly our communities that all of our colleges serve. When faced with a crisis like the one that we've had, preparation is always the number one tool that we use. And again, thankfully, that because of the longstanding work that our colleges have done with online instruction, we were ready to pivot and pivoted very quickly. We did that very same thing when we moved into the governor's phase one, and every time the governor came out with new instructions, we were able to align our programs and how we were going to ramp back up as well. We did that again yesterday, thinking from a system level and from an individual college level about what was next to pivot. So there's no playbook for this, but I will tell you that our community colleges are well positioned to do this work and to help people get back into the workforce.
Mr. Frederick, a similar question for you. The workforce boards across the state certainly hadn't planned for a global pandemic, and they're accustomed to dealing with what's lately been about 4% unemployment. They converted pretty quickly over to a digital service model.
I think the system of one of the testaments of resiliency has been their ability to innovate and do all the various things that they've done to adjust. I think the workforce development system has always been accustomed to responding to economic downturns and all the things that go along with it, both on the business and industry side of things through our business services arm, but also responding to those folks that find themselves on the downside of those situations, which are the displaced workers. And I think with virtual solutions and just thinking innovatively about how to provide services, leveraging things like email and other technologies, our system has really responded well to all the folks that are crying out for our services. As you can imagine, across our state, we've got any number of different circumstances from our metro urban communities that probably have large groundswells of folks looking to them for assistance. But even in our rural areas where brick and mortar sites, which in this instance, many of them are down, have to find their way to the services. And so our system being able to respond and help those folks in rural communities be able to access services through all the means that we have has just been, pretty resounding. And I thank them for that. And I look forward to seeing how they will continue to respond. Our challenges aren't over. As we go further and further, deeper and deeper into this situation, I think we're finding the solutions that will respond to our community. But that means we're going to have to continue to be innovative. We're going to have to continue to leverage our virtual resources and even call on some of our other resource partners to help us with some of those things. Things like broadband and how do we get access to folks where we need to. All of those things will be things that we'll continue to need continue to need to pursue. But I think we're well on our way to doing that. We've responded well, but there's much more work to do, and a lot of people are counting on us to continue to do great work.
Congressman Price, this has been a horrible time for the 4th District and people across the United States, really. You see a lot of data that others of us don't. You're a political scientist by training. You've been in Congress for a long time. Do you have any sense right now about how long it'll be before we recover from what we're going through right now?
Honestly, in many ways, the virus is in charge, not us. We all, I think the first mark of responsible leadership is to tell the truth, and on the basis of the truth or the range of possible health outcomes, to then consider our options and to be very bold in doing so, because this is not an ordinary crisis. None of us have ever seen this or even contemplated it really in its full magnitude. And so there's going to be a real challenge to public policy. But as we consider reopening, as we think about the response, it does above all depend on the health situation, and also our ability, and let's hope it's going to work, but our ability to develop a vaccine, probably by the end of this year at the very earliest, to develop effective antidotes, perhaps. So a lot is contingent on the health situation and on our ability directly to counter it. Having said that, the economic hit, as the previous guests have said, the economic hit is enormous, and it's going to be many years coming back fully in terms of employment and of the consumer demand and lots of consumer activities. Those will probably be years in coming back. I do think public policy matters, and I'm sure we'll be able to discuss this on the program today. But right now, the main policy response, of course, is recovery, and we've had 3 recovery measures amounting to over $3 trillion already come through the Congress, largely on a bipartisan basis after some wrangling. Now the question is, do we stop building this bridge in the middle of the stream, or do we continue with that recovery support? And I very much hope that we can continue, although as everyone knows, this has become more disputed, more partisan, more contentious. And then there's going to be recovery. The economists tell us, and this starts with Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, conservative economists like Doug Holtz-Eakin, they all say the real danger here is not doing too much, it's doing too little. This is not the time for austerity. We need to learn from the recovery measure after the Great Recession in 2009. We did a recovery measure. It prompted year after year of slow but steady recovery and growth. I think most people think now, if that had been greater, if we hadn't gotten into this political debate about austerity, especially if we had invested more in infrastructure, that recovery could have been more robust and faster. But anyway, that's got to be revisited. We're not there yet. We're still at the relief phase, even with this HEROES Act that's now in the balance. It's still mainly about a response and relief. But recovery is yet to come, and public policy is going to matter a great deal as to how that recovery proceeds. Whether it's, we could be on a path, I think once the pandemic is contained, we could be on a path to economic growth and recovery and see some positive indicators, within a year or two. But if we don't respond in a vigorous way, then it could be a much more prolonged and much more painful. So important debates to come.
All right. Well, I wanted to just give people a snapshot of where we are right now so that as we talk about these public policy fixes that Congressman Price referred to throughout the program, we can at least have some grounding about where we are in the U.S. Right now, 23.1 million, a little over 2 million announced this morning that filed for unemployment claims just last week, at 907,000 people unemployed in North Carolina. The rates of unemployment differ. If you are female, you are more likely to be unemployed. Latinx and African American adults are more likely to be unemployed than white adults. Disproportionate impacts on leisure and hospitality, food and drink. Could be that as phase 2 kicks in North Carolina, some of the relief comes to those sectors slowly. Notably, of teenagers that are seeking work, close to 32% are not able to get it. And I can speak for my two that have been trying to find summer work, and they're struggling right now. It's a difficult time. So one of the options for those young people is the possibility of emerging into service. And over the past couple of months, we've seen some pretty remarkable things happen when it comes to service. In the United Kingdom, early in the pandemic, the National Health Service called for 250,000 volunteers. They got 3 times that many people eager to do something to serve. David Brooks has written about the importance of national service. The issue polls pretty well on a bipartisan basis. 88% of Democrats, 74% of Republicans say that they support voluntary national service. There have been some studies that look at the ROI of national service and find it to be positive, to be worth the money. We do know from the last recession that annual applications for AmeriCorps shot up among people that were interested in doing something that would serve. Some churches are calling for something resembling the, quote, new neighborliness. And so there is a lot of activity there, including a bill introduced by Congressman Price on May 5th that called for a dramatic expansion of support for national service. Congressman Price, can you talk about why you introduced that bill now and what it does?
To relate national service, which we all know about, and which the Emerging Issues Organization in particular has promoted for years. This notion of a gap year and of people, students considering national service in ways they might not have before as a way to complement their education and give some purpose going forward. It's a wonderful program. It I've always thought could operate on a much larger scale than it does. It already goes into our communities in so many ways that people might not be fully aware of in terms of the organizations, the good work that is supported by national service. But this pandemic gives us an opportunity, I think, to think about some new possibilities. For that reason, we called the bill the Pandemic Response and Opportunity Through National Service Act. And the idea is, as your screen, as your graphic indicated, is to fund 750,000 national service positions over a 3-year response and recovery period. And that's in part to meet the need that's been often discussed for 300,000 public health workers, people who would be engaged in testing and tracing and vaccine delivery, one hopes at some point, and all kinds of public education, public health related work, which we know is going to be a continuing need. The idea organizationally would be to create a partnership between national service and the CDC. There is a model for that in the FEMA Corps. That's a fairly recent innovation on the national service front, but it's been a great success where in cooperation with FEMA, national service has been deploying volunteers to go out and help with disaster recovery and to augment the efforts going on in very useful ways. Part of this would be to redeploy people who already are in national service. I should stress that because, and Peace Corps volunteers coming back from overseas. A lot of people have been displaced from their assignments. So the idea would be to redeploy into areas that are COVID related. And it's not just public health, it's also the food and nutrition programs, the efforts to reach out and make sure people get the meals they need, the efforts to deal with young people. This summer, there's going to be a lot of I think a need for dealing with young people who otherwise would have been in some kind of summer enrichment program or in camp or wherever. There's a need to help some of those programs keep going, and in other cases to find alternatives. There's just a whole range of COVID-related needs that we could immediately deploy existing volunteers and then recruit a whole new corps of volunteers, and that's the idea. The priority enrollment would go to Peace Corps, Fulbright, AmeriCorps people, but then there'd be an immediate effort to recruit. So we do have good support for this. The main Senate sponsor is Senator Chris Coons, but both he and I have long lists of bicameral, bipartisan sponsors for this idea, and one would think that this is a great national resource. We need to think of it that way, one that can readily be adapted, I think, to address our coronavirus needs, and we of course would there be a lasting benefit in terms of what these mainly young people, but not entirely, what these folks learn, the kind of service they render. We would up the stipend somewhat so that it does address the economic situation that a lot of these people face. We would no doubt be dealing with people who were formerly employed, and this became an employment opportunity. We also would look to enhance the education benefit, which national service now features, make that a good solid 2-year educational benefit, so that it would have a lasting impact on the lives of those who get involved and prepare them for longer term employment. So there are lots of wrinkles here, but that's the basic idea. And
you see this
we're
as part of
enthused
the,
about it.
sorry, you see this as part of the next potential stimulus package, or would this be a separate bill? And do you have the bipartisan support you would need to do this?
Well, we're working on that, and we think the answer is yes, that it could be, it's both. Of course, it is a freestanding bill. It's been introduced. It has all the usual co-sponsors, but our assumption is at this point we would not necessarily pass it as a freestanding bill. We would pass it as part of the next recovery package.
One of our AmeriCorps alums says it was the best decision she ever made to do that. Other people agreeing that it may be time to expand services there. I'll just mention in passing, you alluded earlier to the work that the Institute for Emerging Issues is doing on what we call Service Year NC. We're a member of the Service Year Alliance, and the work that we're doing is led by Daryl Lester. We're focusing on 16 to 28-year-olds, and our goal is to make national service a common expectation among people who are emerging from school, with the idea that we know communities need help, we know nonprofits and local units of government need more help, young people need meaningful work experience. It could be that employment is tricky over the next couple of years. You've seen AmeriCorps and other service programs at work, and they serve a lot of different organizations. Can you give just a sense of how, what kinds of organizations people in national service would be working with?
It's I may have used the word well-kept secret earlier. If I didn't, I should have. The presence of AmeriCorps, the Senior Corps, Vista, the presence of these volunteers throughout our community it has a huge impact already, and as you said, many of us who have supported national service. One reason I got involved in this effort with Senator Coons is that Doris Matsu and I are the co-chairs of the National Service Caucus in the House of Representatives. So we picked up on this as an obvious opportunity, but I think if you talk to, let's just say, Habitat for Humanity organizers, their work would be very, very difficult without AmeriCorps volunteers, because those Saturday build projects don't just organize themselves. They have to be organized in advance, and the AmeriCorps volunteers are a key component of Habitat for Humanity. Here in Chapel Hill, there's an array of literacy programs that students get involved in, but there too, the organizing, the deploying of the volunteers, this is done by AmeriCorps workers. You go over to the Community Health Center. Guess what? There are a bunch of AmeriCorps volunteers who are working there and gaining skills, but also helping do the work of the Community Health Center. It's just a natural to expand that kind of. It's not like AmeriCorps parachutes into the community and does these things themselves. They feed expertise and energy and enthusiasm through their volunteers. They feed these organizations that are operating on the ground, and I think that's the way that we empower local organizations and local efforts. It's a very, very good model, and the volunteers do wonderful work in this community and across this state. North Carolina has always been one of the biggest users of AmeriCorps per capita. We have a large presence here, and just think about the possibilities of really increasing this by some order of magnitude. And initially using it to deal with the various aspects of pandemic response. But the possibilities beyond that, I think, would be very positive for the community and also for the individuals involved.
Someone's comparing this in the chat to the WPA from the 1930s, which I just barely missed, but that was a pathway back from a really tough economic time for a lot of people, the Works Progress Administration.
I think it's an apt comparison. There are other aspects of the New Deal experience that are probably apt comparisons as well when it comes to the recovery plan. There are public works aspects, a lot of things, but the personnel aspect of it, yes, it's a very good comparison, and I would hope we would learn from that.
I just mentioned a couple of people are asking for how to find out more about this on a national level. It's nationalservice.gov, and then you can look for AmeriCorps there. On our website, you can find emergingissues.org or reach out to Daryl Lester, DK Lester at ncsu.edu. Congressman Price, we'll come back to you in just a minute. I wanted to turn attention to Dr. Leatherwood, who's has been dealing with a really complicated situation and now has to deal with an even more complicated situation, and that is trying to predict the behavior of young people and adults in a time of crisis. And Dr. Leatherwood, before I do this, let me just show a little bit of polling that we found recently about education plans that people are making and where they're going. On the one hand, you have a lot of people who are canceling their education plans, and others who are threatening to if universities or colleges go completely online. On the other hand, about half say they're going to come back sometime in the next 5 years. That's kind of hard to plan for. A lot of people in manufacturing, finance, and IT said they would change fields if they lost jobs. Then you see some changes in where people want to go back to school. Interest in employer-based training is still very strong, but has declined during the crisis. Online-only interest has increased, and interest in community colleges has shown a huge increase. So as you look at those, I'm wondering whether they comport with what you're hearing from the folks in your service area.
About predicting student behavior, it is important to think about all those demographics and the stakeholders that are directly impacted. But there's one unifying factor in most every one of those groups, and you mentioned your children, and that is all those job loss or the lack of the ability to find a job, either on their own or even both of their parents as well. So there's financial motivations that are also going to remain in terms of foreseeable future. So let's look at just high school students in isolation. Right now, we have high school students that had planned to go on to a 4-year college in the fall, and they want that experience. But we've got this warning of potential resurgence of the virus in the fall and the winter. So we've got our 4-year campuses. Some of them have already announced that they're either in a virtual environment only or a shortened semester on campus. Well, as a result of that, many of those students may choose to stay in the safety net of their home and in a more affordable option and attend their local community college. Go ahead and get their first 2 years of their gen ed and then transfer into that 4-year school. So these young people, they want consistency. And right now there's a lot of uncertainty, certainly over the past few months. I also think that looking at student debt, we also have this generation that is coming through right now that are much more debt averse and more focused on graduating without that debt. And it's become even more apparent during this pandemic. So this, in addition to the rising cost to attend a 4-year university, has really community colleges have sort of risen to the challenge, and it's right there in front of our students. We've become very appealing. We also have another group, and that's our college students, and countless numbers of these students who paid to attend to have that 4-year experience, which we all enjoyed and loved, only to be sent home to learn online. And though we've got these students now that are saying, well, I don't want to fall behind. I'm going to go ahead and get some of my credits at the community college. So we have that dynamic going on as well. So we're going to, looking to fill that gap for them. Now let's shift to adults. Individuals who have just recently found themselves unemployed, they'll be looking for careers that seem to be a little bit more recession-proof. They don't want to go through this again. They want to find something that's going to give them some stability and also that pay more than a lower wage. I think if you look at the data, it shows that a lot of the jobs, the unemployment is really in the lower paying range. So the more you learn, the more you earn, and the less likely you are to be one of those that are unemployed. So we've got our adults coming to us. And then when you've got extended unemployment, those benefits really give them the opportunity to come back and retrain, learn a new skill, upskill. And then another population I think that's really important that has particular groups been hit extremely hard, and that's our small businesses. Our small and medium businesses are the job creation machine for our communities. And I think that giving them the support, some of them may not make it, unfortunately, but that's where the colleges come in and really help them to figure out maybe a career change for them, but also to look at those small businesses and say, what can we do to diversify your revenue stream? Is there a value added product that we can add to your company? So how can we help them build back as well? So there's multiple levels of stakeholders where the community colleges will really be playing a role in this economy.
Just note across the state that every community college is part of a small business center network, and so has resources specifically targeting that advice and counsel for small businesses in their area. The university system, the public university system, has the small business technology development centers, which also provide low cost, no cost support for small businesses that are trying to make their way through this. And surely some small business owners are taking advantage of online courses to improve their finance skills or other short courses that are going to make them stronger and better able to cope with this as we go through it. So thank you for that work. Can you talk about some other fields maybe that you see as promising coming out of this that you think there might be a lot of interest in students taking?
Well, clearly, healthcare is going to be front and center. Our response to this pandemic has highlighted the need for more qualified providers serving all the way across the spectrum related to all of our nursing, LPN, RN programs, emergency management, emergency services. We've got public safety all involved on the front lines. Engineering and manufacturing as supply chain and moves back to the United States, particularly in health-related products. I think that we're gonna see an uptick in those. And we also talked a little bit about recession-proof careers. If you start looking at IT and technology-related, logistics, data analytics, software development, That's significant. And I think we're going to see an uptick in that as well. I also do believe that we're going to see a resurgence in science. Science will become really cool again on this pandemic. It's really amazing to watch the science and the work that has been done and will be done throughout this pandemic. I really do believe that it's really important and it's emerging.
Wanted to show how folks can get in touch with Blue Ridge Community College if they want to. Do you think net in the next 6 months you're going to see an increase in enrollment, or is there going to be a lag while people try to figure out what's happening to them?
Well, early indicators here at Blue Ridge, and I really don't see it to be any different with my peers across the state, for summer enrollment, and it's very early, but we're up 20% already, early indicators. And so that's a good sign. I do expect that fall, we're going to see the same thing. We've been through multiple recessions, and this is where the community colleges really shine in terms of helping recovery for this country, and certainly for the state of North Carolina. I really do believe that never in the history of this state has the role of our community colleges been more important to helping North Carolina return to the economic vitality that we enjoyed 2 months ago. Right now is really the time for our community colleges to dig in and help our communities and help our state.
Agreed. And there's a lot of support for that from the chat, from people who've both attended as a full-time student, others getting some side credits, others getting some brush-up courses. The ability of community colleges to quickly react in crisis is just an indispensable resource for our state. Congressman Price, I think you wanted to jump in.
Let me just chime in and say that it's really good news to hear that the community colleges are responding in this way across the state. It's not surprising, but it's heartening, and I would like just say a couple of quick things. One, underscore the importance of the small business technology development centers, the network that many of the community colleges cooperate with. This is a federally supported network of centers. Scott Doherty is our statewide director. They're fully deployed, and people are seeking their advice every day about accessing the relief programs and also the kind of consultation they provide for entrepreneurs, for startups, how to navigate the procurement process. Lots of things that are very valuable that they're adapting now to deal with this situation. The second thing is that we do have a National Science Foundation program that I think will and should be redeployed to meet some of the community college needs, and I hope that we'll have lots of applications coming from North Carolina institutions for what we call advanced technological education grants. I was just reviewing this is a program I happened to initiate when I was in my early years in the Congress. I was just looking at the record. Something like 16 North Carolina institutions have gotten grants from this program for all kinds of innovative work in the last 10 years. But now, when you think about what adaptations required to deal with this situation, and the kind of student populations that are going to be coming in, and what their career interests and prospects are going to look like, and creative ways. That's what that program is designed to do, is to help fund best practices, more creative curricula, teaching methods, partnerships. So I would hope, and I'm going to stress this with the state system, I would hope our community colleges, as they retool and think about how they want to do things in new and different and expansive ways, I would hope they take advantage of that prospect of federal support.
Thank you, Congressman Price and Dr. Leatherwood. Jeff, I wanted to turn to you. You're an employer yourself, and that's one of the requirements if you're going to be part of a workforce board, is that half of the members on any workforce board across the state have to be in the employment community. You're a senior VP of HR at RTI, a large company in the Research Triangle area, but you're also head of the State Association of Workforce Boards. Is there any quick way of understanding if somebody's asking where the workforce boards in the state are?
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend that anyone interested and finding out where all the workforce boards are. You have our graphic up, but you can also go to our website, ncawdb.org, and you'll find this graphic there, as well as other comprehensive resources to help you navigate the workforce system. I might add that President Leatherwood hails from Mountain Area Works, which is in purple on the chart. But at any rate, anyone interested in locating their local workforce board could visit our site and find that information out, as well as they could ncworks.gov would also have similar information uh, for folks interested in finding out where their local workforce board is.
Let's talk about how this process is going to work. So we have more than 900,000 people currently unemployed. And a KFF poll I saw the other day showed that 83% of those who've lost jobs really are planning on or hoping to be able to go back to their previous employer in 6 months. But there's still going to be a huge number of people that are coming into these workforce development board offices across the state, either virtually or physically over time. How are you set up to handle that flood as people come in desperately needing your services? We had something in chat earlier already talking about the difficulty that the employment system has had getting unemployment checks out, but what about the reemployment system that you help to lead?
Yeah, absolutely. I think many of our centers and center directors are busy at work trying to work through that. I think we'll have to look at a number of different things to address the influx of folks and just the sheer abruptness that this COVID-19 situation has brought on to our centers. But I think things like we'll probably go to more appointment driven processes, setting up, trying to be as proactive as possible to set folks up to address their concerns. Um, our virtual work will be even more important for us, trying to reach folks where they are so that perhaps they don't even have to come to our brick and mortar centers as they come back online. That gives us more flexibility. I think looking at our staffing models to be able to staff beyond just the traditional uh, day may be something for us to consider. But there are a number of different things that our centers are considering to prepare for just the sheer influx of all the folks that we know are going to be coming to seek us out. And more importantly, because a lot of folks, due to some of the all of the things going on in our environment, there's just a lot of uncertainty, and some folks just don't even know how to think about what to do, what to do first. Should I attend community college, or should I even go back to school, or should I focus on getting a job and going back to work, or what am I good at? And all those things are things that our career centers are equipped to handle. So we know that there's going to be an influx of folks looking for help with those kinds of questions, and we're looking at innovative ways to do that for them. There,
Areas do you think are going to come back first, and what areas do you think are going to take the longest time to recover? So, where's the first fruit going to come uh, in this work of reemploying people, and what's going to take longest?
my sense, Leslie, is that the service sector has been hit very hard. Um, Many of them will come back. They will come back slowly as um, stay-at-home orders in different municipalities relax some of their restrictions around their marketplace. And as they do that, some of those jobs will start to come back, but many won't come back. And so those folks, I think, will find themselves trying to find their way either into a new career path or just figuring out what are they going to do as that career path struggles to recover or recovers in a way that's just very elongated. I think, as the president mentioned, we'll see things like IT and cybersecurity and healthcare and some of those things. They're going to come back. I think they're going to have a very resilient recovery, and many folks are going to flock to that. I think manufacturing, I think as manufacturers begin to reacclimate to a new norm, and that's what this is for sure. If anyone thinks that we're going to go back to the way we were in terms of manufacturing or any employment sector, you got another thing coming. I think um, again, as we relax some of the restrictions that have been placed on our workforce in terms of stay-at-home orders and that sort of thing, employers are trying to figure out, how do we recover? How do we bring our workers back and begin to rekindle our business and revenues and things of that nature? But at the same time, we have to keep our people safe. There's not one prioritized over the other. It's a balance. And I think the fear of most employers, probably all employers, is that somehow gets out of balance and you jeopardize either one. But I don't think anyone wants to risk the health and safety of their core, which is their people. And so that'll be that's the balance that they're trying. But I think that manufacturing will be slow. Everyone's going to be a little bit slow because people just they don't have all the answers. And as we figure out the answers, then things will speed up. And I think as we experience this more, um, people will get more comfortable doing the things that they need to do to recover our economy. But that's going to take time, and we have to.
A lot of questions coming in. Let me just ask one more for you. Can you just give a quick overview of where people can go to find out more information if you're looking to connect to a local workforce development board, and what kind of services you can get there?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, you can go to ncawdb.org, and that will give you information as to all of the local workforce boards and how you can reach them.
Um, so lots of questions, and I'm going to try to sort through them, and they're sort of for all of you. So different pieces of them are coming in at different times. Um, Congressman Price questioned about when the $1,200 check is coming in. Apparently, not all those have gone out. Have you heard anything about the deployment of those recovery checks, and whether there are any issues with them, the percentage maybe that have gone out? Is there any kind of update or report about the success in getting those checks out?
I do think we've turned the corner on getting those checks out. There's some difficult cases that we'll want to hear about in our congressional offices and otherwise if people aren't getting what they should get. But as you know, the direct payments, and by the way, the new HEROES bill would have another direct payment to carry us into the summer. But the first $1,200 direct payment is to be administered through the IRS. The people who got their checks most easily and quickly were those who, of course, had tax forms filed and also had deposit instructions with their local bank. Those deposits were made, in our experience, pretty quickly and uniformly. Now we're at the phase where people who don't have those kinds of arrangements, or maybe don't even file taxes but are on Social Security or some other connection with the federal government, are getting checks in the mail, and those are now coming. They're a few more weeks of those on that time frame where those checks should get out. So all of these systems have been jammed up. The unemployment system here in North Carolina that we've augmented, that's even worse. The PPP system for small businesses and nonprofits, that is the Paycheck Protection Program. Those are the three elements of relief to individuals and families. They complement each other. They've all been overloaded systems. But the answer is, I think we're over the hump on the direct payments, and if those aren't received in the next couple of weeks, I would say somebody in that category where they didn't have a direct deposit arrangement, where they're expecting a physical check, if that's not received in a couple of weeks, we need to hear about it. But I do believe those are coming out pretty regularly now.
Is this something you get calls about, and is your constituent services working
Yes, indeed.
the way it typically
Yes,
does?
we're deployed and working very steadily. Everybody's teleworking, but we're all doing a lot of this casework, and believe me, all of these programs involve a lot of anxious people and a lot of glitches, unfortunately. Particularly the state unemployment system. It was so deficient to start with. So we really got to get that cracking, and that has some post-pandemic implications too. We just got to do better with our unemployment system.
There's a question in the chat about virtual job fairs, and Jeff and Laura, I wonder if you could speak to any success that you've seen with doing virtual job fairs. Typically, those are nice places to meet someone face to face and handshake and get to know them. Any success that you've seen so far doing that virtually?
Yeah, I could speak to that. We have a number of boards that have implemented virtual job fairs. As a matter of fact, I got a chance to take a look at one of those virtual job fairs just a couple of days ago, and I was amazed at how sleek it is, both for the visiting employer, but also for any job seekers. That might be looking for those employers that are looking for employees, and it's a wonderful way to bring folks together, but it's very different. It's virtual, and of course, some folks that might be a little leery about a virtual job fair. It looks to be pretty intuitive and very easy to navigate, but a number of our boards have deployed that, and a number of our boards are looking at that. And it's a wonderful tool. Again, an innovative new way of thinking and approaching work, and I think it will bode well for both employers and those job seekers. And we'll have information on our site about where you can find or get a look-see at some of those virtual job fairs, so that folks can experience it for themselves.
I just kind of I got to get a plug in for the Mountain Area Workforce Board too. And Nathan Ramsey and his team are very creative and have recently just done a virtual job fair. But I think moving forward, this is an innovation that really needs to continue. We're so accustomed to that face-to-face shaking hands, but guess what? The younger generation that were brought up on technology, I really feel like that this virtual job fair is really going to appeal to them, and it's going to open up new opportunities. So I just think it's not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's absolutely a new way of working, and especially the younger portion of our workforce will naturally gravitate to that and have a grand old time. But I think as our centers engage other portions of the workforce, I think it'll be very important for us to help them engage processes like that too, to demystify some of the skepticisms or fears that folks have with a virtual approach. I think that'll be a big piece of work for our system to help folks become comfortable with that. It's the way our work is migrating, and so we need to help marry those to that. And I just think that's a big piece of work for us, and we're all about doing those kinds of things to move the workforce forward.
Congressman Price, it looks like, at least on the chat, some people still struggling to get those PPP payments. So similar, you mentioned some of the delay in the one-to-one checks, some of the challenges that North Carolina's Employment Commission has had getting it out, and some concerns about either not getting or the wrong people getting the PPPs. Is that something you're hearing a lot of?
Yes, the PPP has been a struggle to get that, to get it adequately funded, to get it adequately flexible, and to get it implemented. Here too, I think we've turned the corner in terms of the kind of responses we're getting. That finally these things are coming through for, especially for some of the smaller businesses. I've heard from a couple of restaurants and entertainment venues recently that finally it worked out. That they're designed for nonprofits as well. And that has become a small museum. I know just got one. The notion of who should get these, they're not there. There is a challenge there, and some firms that got them and got some pretty unfavorable publicity, justifiably, I think, in terms of the ways they could have handled this through their own resources. Some of those have been returned, and some redesign has occurred. There was a mid-course correction on this program where we redesigned it, set aside more of the funds for the smaller lending institutions and the smaller businesses, the disadvantaged businesses, minority businesses that they often serve. In the HEROES Act, there's a further refinement, which is a further targeting of this to the right people, and also an extension. There's a problem with the expiration date of these. These are forgivable loans for the most part, but if they expire, then if they expire prematurely, then they're less useful, and they're tied to paycheck protection. That was the idea, so people don't go unemployment. So the payrolls are maintained and the benefits are maintained, but in some businesses that's harder to do than others. And that as a condition of the loan forgiveness is probably going to need to be more flexible as well. So we're trying to get the money out to the right people. We're trying as we go to refine the program so the right people are eligible, that they're at the front of the line. And then if we can get this HEROES Act passed, we're going to make the terms more flexible so that people are assured of loan forgiveness.
Jeff, any closing advice for people that are getting ready to go back into the employment market?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, engage the process and enjoy the journey. There are resources out there for those folks that are looking to engage a new career, to learn more about themselves, to do some new and different things. And I would just say there's a lot of uncertainty out there. It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to not know where to turn. And I think that goes for job seekers as well as businesses. The local workforce board is a wonderful place to start because we bring the synthesis of education, job seekers, employers, city governments, municipalities together to build strategies that helps everyone. And I think for those folks that are out there looking for work, though, don't get discouraged, don't get alarmed. Just find out where your resources are, engage and embrace those resources, and I think you'll find the results that you're looking for over time. If anyone is looking for answers right away, sometimes answers take longer to develop than we would like, but I assure you, if you engage your resources, share where you are with the folks that are trying to help you. They'll help you find where you need to be to get the help that you need. And so that would be my advice.
Let me close there. There is a path back to employment. There are multiple paths back. In some cases, it will be with your local employer. In other cases, it will be through a helping agency like the Association of Workforce Boards and the 23 that are all across North Carolina. There is a path back to education. One of the best paths is through community colleges, but a lot of people are going to be looking for solutions, both short-term industry tune-ups of skills, but also longer form courses in community colleges and universities. And a lot of people are going to be heading towards service. And if Congressman Price has his way, there will be some additional slots available for AmeriCorps to help communities across North Carolina. I'd like to thank all of our guests, Congressman David Price, representing North Carolina's 4th District, Laura Leatherwood, the president of Blue Ridge Community College and on the president's recovery task force from coronavirus, and Jeff Frederick, a senior VP at RTI, but also president of the North Carolina Association of Workforce Development Boards. Next week, we hope that you will join us for a discussion called Civics in the Time of Pandemic, when we're going to be looking at how we redevelop our civics at a time when we can't be around each other. Our guests will be True Pettigrew, who helps broker conversations between people in different races and sectors, Pierce Godwin, president of the National Listen First Project, L.B. Prevette of Wilkes County, one of the Aspen Institute's official weavers of community, and Cyrus Rad, an NC State senior leading efforts to improve conversation at NC State and other colleges across North Carolina. We want to hear from you about your concerns and interests so that we can find people to answer your questions on a variety of subjects. Please email me if you have any of those. First and Future, Connecting in Crisis will be next week. We're sponsored all this month by Lowe's, the home improvement retailer. We're really grateful for their support. The show is produced by Greg Hedgepeth and James Herrick. Kirsten Chang helps us get the word out. We hope you will help us too. We'll be here each week, same time, through at least the end of June. If you're interested in other emerging issues IEI is working on, go to our website, emergingissues.org. Special thanks this week to Renee Potts for help with slides, for research from Simone Coleman, Trishelle Moore, and Caitlin Lancaster. I'm Leslie Boney. Stay safe and well. See you in the future.